Go to 1-800-Flowers.com.
Find the perfect gift.
And wow the people you love.
Wow. This is amazing.
Whether you want to say happy birthday,
So cute.
Or I love you.
I love you too.
Thinking of you.
Wow.
Go to 1-800-Flowers.com.
Celebrate the people you love.
Hi, I'm Jim McCann, founder of 1-800-Flowers. I'm not satisfied when I learn something new unless I share it forward. And so we created this podcast to continue that, to share forward the wonderful people we get to meet and most importantly get to learn from and make our lives richer and better. Together we'll cover the human experience. And for me, the human experience is foundational in the idea of relationships. The topics will be far-reaching, but the common element you'll see here is it's all about relationships. So I invite you to join us on this journey. Come experience it with us, share your thoughts and ideas, and become part of our community. We'd love to have you.
So I'm here today with a friend, John Gargano. John's a really interesting guy. He's an expert in the world of hospitality. He spent a good deal of his life around the hospitality industry. And his personal story is just so interesting to me, John, your story, that I wanted to share it with my community. And my community includes those of us here at Flowers, our friends at Worth, and my friends and family, in particular my family, because I've been telling them about you, and they've met you, and they've gotten to know you at the different events that you've helped us with. You get to know someone in a context like that, you think, okay, you know this story, but you've been through such a journey, and it's a journey that's ongoing, and we can't see what the next chapters are, but we're excited to watch as you scale new heights and root for you and be part of your journey going forward. So take us back. You grew up in a farm country, and people would be surprised that the next sentence is in New Jersey.
Yes. I grew up in southern New Jersey, which most people you talk to don't think there's farms in New Jersey.
It is called the Garden State, John.
Yeah, but you wouldn't know that if you're in East Orange or Brick, right? My dad was a green onion farmer. Growing up for me was, as soon as you could walk or talk, you were driving a tractor or making wooden crates for the scallions or planting onion sets. It was a different growing up, but a good growing up, because you learned, morals, value, work ethic, responsibility. But my dad worked too damn hard. Farmers work so hard.
There's something about this idea that farmers deal with a 7-day clock, not a 5-day clock.
7-day, 24-hour. I remember when I thought I was going to do less work and go from vegetables to flowers, I thought it was going to be easier. But you know what? All winter long, you have to go check the heaters in the greenhouses every 30 minutes. Thank God Dad did that for me. I didn't have to do that every 30 minutes. But I guess in any career, there's pros and cons. Dad worked too hard. You couldn't compete with big agribusiness anymore. They're all subsidized by the government, et cetera. So I said, I'm not going to go in the farm. I'm going to try flowers. But that was just as hard. We were profitable. I started selling Easter flowers on street corners for Easter and Mother's Day when I was 15. I couldn't drive, so I used to pay my grandfather to drive me around and buy everything during the operation. Always about sales. I was always fascinated with how to sell, how to increase revenue, how to make your product different than everybody else's.
So you always hustle.
Always hustle. Always hustle.
Now, tell me, you mentioned your dad. Gargano is an Italian name. So you folks, Italian-American. How long ago did any of your ancestors come here from Italy? Was your father first generation, second generation?
So my father was first generation. His mother and father came here in 1904 through Ellis Island.
Wow.
Maybe 50 Garganos came over. Half settled in Brooklyn and Queens, and the other half settled in South Jersey. All the farmers went to South Jersey.
So his family's background was farming in the old country?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
His mother was a great chef, begged him to go into the pizza business. She used to make pizzas out of her home every Friday night. Used to sell 150 pizzas. My dad would deliver them. And she just begged him not to go into farming, but he was hard-headed and he wanted to be like his dad and his brother, and that's what he did.
And you broke the string. You went away from vegetable farming. You tried growing flowers. It worked somewhat, but it was too tough a road.
I broke all the strings. I was the first for a lot of things, good and bad. But yeah, I broke off and I went into growing from the Easter flower sales. I started to get an attraction to that industry. I started with 2 greenhouses. I used to grow bedding plants, Easter flowers, sell them on corners. My mind, it's just how it works. I had a partner. We bought a large-scale greenhouse operation in Blue Anchor, New Jersey. It had like 30 greenhouses, half-acre walk-in cooler for the bulbs because you have to cool the bulbs all winter long or they won't bloom. Sure. And I worked hard. We worked hard all summer. And then I worked at my aunt, kind of like my second mother, Diane and Bob Hennessy, owned a funeral home in Williamstown. And I used to work with them all winter. So I was an apprentice funeral director in the winter and then on the farm in the summer, always worked.
And then you decided farming was not the path you wanted to follow. What was next?
I'm sure you read my Humans in New York story. I was dealt a personal tragedy in the late 90s.
I did, John. In fact, I reread it over the weekend. I, put aside some time to prep for our conversation today. And having met with you and I had wonderful breakfast together several weeks ago. And having reread it in the context of having really delved into a lot of those subjects when we were together, it was emotional. The time I put aside yesterday to reread this, and I can't wait for you to share that message with our community. So, yes, your Humans in New York. You wrote a multi-piece 13-post series on your journey. It's emotionally gripping.
Looking back now, wow, it was a rough road. And to be where I am now, looking back over the past, just makes this that much sweeter. But there's a message there for everybody, Jim, right? No matter what life deals you, just know with the right choices and with the motivation, you can change anything.
It's almost like contrite to say, oh, you got to make the right choices and you can overcome everything. But it's easy to make the wrong choices too.
Very easy. We went through this period in the late 80s. Most of your listeners probably don't know this, but we'll share it with them now so they can understand the context here. Working at the funeral home, Diane and Bob, like my second family, always worried about someone else. The epitome of hospitality. Diane and Bob lost their 2-year-old child, Gianna, choking on McDonald's French fries at 2. And that changed Diane forever. From that point on, life became about everybody else, make life bigger than herself. And that's how she compensated for her loss. And I find a lot of people in hospitality have similar situations like that where they experience a lot of pain or tragedy. And this is retribution. This is not ever letting anyone feel the way you did. While I was working for them at the funeral home, they said, you don't have insurance. Let's get you health insurance. So she said, be here 12 o'clock on Thursday. So I went there. Back then, you had to go through this whole long thing to get life insurance and all that. 4 days later, I'm at my mom's house and the doorbell rang and it was the FedEx to deliver a message telling me that I got denied life insurance for one of 5 crazy reasons. The only one that it could have been was that I was HIV positive. And having a diagnosis like that in 1998 and now, 2 different things. Right now, you get a shot every 3 months. You don't have to go to the doctors. You get checked out once every 3 months. You're great. It's like blood pressure. But then I thought I was dead in 2 years. So I said, you know what? I'm selling everything. I'm giving up everything. I walked away from my business, moved to Philadelphia, and I started working at Lebec Fin for George Perrier, one of the best chefs to ever step foot on American soil from France. Complete package. Crazy. Times were different then. Chefs don't behave like that no more. He wasn't wrong. That was the era. But my first night there, washing dishes and pots are being thrown and every curse word in the world you're hearing. At the end of the night, I'm walking out. He's sitting at the bar stool. His feet are dangling. They don't even touch the rail. And he calls me over, kisses me on the forehead, and invites me to go to an Eagles game with me. Tells me he loves me. I'm like, what just happened? Right? But that was my introduction to hospitality. And to watch him just make sure every guest every night had a good time, no matter what happened, really taught me what it was to build a great business in hospitality.
So you get this diagnosis out of the blue. Back in 1998, medicine had not had the advances in the 25 years since.
Right.
that's rendered this a very manageable and controllable and unaffected to your lifestyle kind of disease.
Right.
You think it's a death sentence. You say, I said, I'm moving out of rural farm country in New Jersey, and I'm going to Philadelphia, going to the big city.
Right. I didn't tell a soul. The only person that knew was Diane at the funeral home and me.
Mhm.
I didn't tell my mother until 5 years later when I got arrested. Italian families in a small town where every person on the street for 3 miles is related to you.
Yeah.
I couldn't change my socks down the street without my mom knowing, because Aunt Katie with her binoculars was out the window calling her, right? So I'm like, I'm just going to go. I went to Philly. I started this new career in hospitality. That wasn't enough for me. So I said, you know what? I'm going to New York. What's the best restaurant in New York for hospitality? They said, Union Square Cafe. I said, I'm going to get a job there. They said, no, you're not. I said, why? They said, because they don't hire nobody without New York experience. I said, they haven't interviewed me yet. I went there, sat down, got the job.
And what was that first job at Union Square?
I was a captain. I worked for Danny Meyer over there for like 2 years. But as time passed, I started going out more, started drinking more, smoking more, you name it, started selling a little bit to finance the usage. And then before you know it, this February 1st of 2002, the feds arrested me.
Okay, that's back in Philadelphia, and ironically, in the Lowe's Hotel in Philadelphia,
Yes.
in room
911. When I checked in that day and they gave me room 911, I'm a pretty smart guy. I should have ran like hell. You know, that was the turning point, right? Because before that, I'd had 6 state cases. In the state, you hire a hotshot lawyer. My dad used to be in politics, so we knew the best lawyer in every county. A little slap on the wrist, but all that does is empower you, right? 6 times I got arrested and charged in the state. Not one person said, hey, what's going on with you? You graduated top 5 in your class. Your dad's a politician. You worked for the state police for 5 years. You had a bright future. Why do you start using drugs at 30? Nobody did their job, right? They're charged with the responsibility of trying to help the defendant and rehabilitate them and get them in a better place. That's before the prosecution and after.
would it have had a prospect of succeeding with you, or were you too far gone then?
I think I was too far gone, but I feel as though 20 years incarceration and 10 years supervised release is way too excessive.
The story that's funny and sad, ironic, and funny all at the same time, whereas you're being led through the lobby in handcuffs, and a guy from the Lowe's Hotel comes charging up to you and
Typical
says,
security guard. Typical security guard, right? He says, Mr. Gargano. I'm like, yes. He's like, I'm from the Lowe's Hotel. I just want to let you know you're never allowed in our property again. I said, bro, I'm going to jail for the rest of my life. You know, go F yourself. You know, are you serious? The feds were just laughing. They're like, what is it with this guy?
you stand trial, you get convicted, and now a judge has to sentence you.
Yes.
Now, you write a lot about your thoughts and concerns about mandatory minimum sentences, which is a federal law at the time. And so your sentence for your now first time conviction.
First time conviction.
The judge sentenced you, fill us in on the sentence.
20-year term of incarceration, 10 years of supervised release. Supervised release in the feds, much different than probation in the state. It's very strict. You have to tell them if anything you're doing that's outside of your normal agenda, you have to tell them. 77% of the people that come home from prison return within 3 years. 77%.
That's astonishing, John.
Well, it's because it's a self-serving system.
Well, okay, I guess we got to
Yeah.
leap ahead a little bit here, because let's pause on that, because I think a lot of people will be startled to hear what happens. But you get a 20-year sentence, which is federal time, and that's very different than state time, because federal time, even with the best behavior, you're going to do 90% of your sentence, right?
Yep. You're going to do more like 92 because the Bureau of Prisons personnel don't do their jobs. So your paperwork don't get in till late. Right now, 18 months after the First Step Act was passed, inmates are just receiving the reductions that they deserve 18 months ago, because that's how backlogged the government is.
you get sent to MCC,
Yep.
Metropolitan Correctional Center, which is became infamous because of Jeffrey Epstein. In fact, you're placed on the same floor.
Yep, same floor he was on, 9th floor, special housing unit. I walk in, you're handcuffed behind your back. So you put your hands through the door, they uncuff your cuffs. I turned around and I looked at the room. No lie, Jim. Hair on the floor, a half-inch deep. I don't know when the last time the room was cleaned. It was the most disgusting thing I ever saw. You can't get nothing to clean the room. You can't get a change of clothes. You don't get out to get a shower like you're supposed to. It's just a complete debacle. There's no accountability whatsoever.
34 years old, you grow up in rural New Jersey, strong Italian-American heritage culture around you, family-centric kind of place, hardworking. You get the sentence that rattles you, changes your mindscape. And until you're in Philly and you're at a bar one night, you would never, ever tried any drugs at all.
Never. Matter of fact, in high school, I stopped talking to my friends who smoke weed. I was so dead against it. My mother's brothers had drug problems, both of them. My father intervened, gave him $1,000, told him to move to Florida and get away from the friends he had because he felt that was best for him. The guy moved to Florida, built $1 million business, family, saved his life. The other one ended up ODing on heroin. And I was dead set against drugs when I was a child, like dead set against.
Your whole perception of the world, your place in it, its future is upset. You're just working in hospitality jobs to make a living.
We're in a club. It's late. I'm tired. I tell my friend Jay, I'm going home. I'm tired. He's like, no. And he pulls out this bag with a little key and he puts the tiniest bit of white stuff on the end of the key. He says, sniff this. What do I got to lose? Right? I did. And it was the perfect drug for a person in my state of mind, because that drug makes you forget about everything that's bothering you and just makes you think that everything's okay. And that's where it started.
And that drug is meth.
Yep.
One trial with a state of mind you're in, and you start down this spiral.
If you had psychological problems and you go to the doctor and they give you a medicine that makes you forget all that and you feel great, of course you're going to take it. This drug feeds off of adults that have their therapy issues, psychological issues. It's the perfect drug for those people because it makes them forget all that. And then their problems just compound until they're unmanageable. And that's what happened to me. Prison, as mad as I am about the process and the outcome, getting there, it's changed my life. It's saved my life, right? Because had I not, who knows what might have happened. I could have OD'd. I could have gotten killed. I could have gotten shot. Who knows? Who knows what could happen?
Where do you go next?
I get sentenced. The day I get sentenced, I walk in the courtroom. It's the most uneventful thing. The judge asked me a couple questions. I told him, listen, send me as far away from home as you possibly can. He said, why? That's the most strangest request I ever had. I said, no. I said, think about it, Judge. You want your mother getting up every holiday and thinking, do I go see Johnny or do I go with the family? I said, I've already disgraced them. I'm going to make that decision for her. She can come see me whenever she plans it, but she don't have to feel obligated to come see me on special holidays. She can live her life like she would as if I was home.
So now you're obviously sober then. And boy, what could be more sobering than that day when you're facing, what's coming, but to hear it must be startling. And one of the things you said, you didn't write this in your piece, but you did tell me about it at breakfast, about the cultural differences between you and how you grew up and the other people you were incarcerated with. And while you said to the judge, send me as far away as possible so I'm not a further burden to my mom. It's selfless. It also is an insight into how you're beginning to recover from the person you were, but you knew wasn't you.
I think that's where the root of the criminal justice system problems are. If it's visiting day, everyone's up. Most of the inmates are ironing their jumpsuits and they're dancing and they're happy. I'm going out on the dance floor today to see my mom, my wife, my kids, my girl, my baby mom. And I'm saying, I can't wait for this to be over. Your mother has to come through security,
which is
clear a metal detector.
Is a serious procedure. And it's
Take her-
dehumanizing.
Yes, take her bra off, right? Leave it there. Come in the visiting room without it because it had metal in it. It's just a dehumanizing experience. Treat me that way. I committed the crime. Don't treat them that way. But to everyone else, this is normal, right? When you grow up in a disadvantaged community and you see your brother go to jail, in many cases, your mother or your father go to jail or your grandmother go to jail, it's not unusual. They don't view it as antisocial or not against societal norms. It's a normal occurrence to them. Most of them grew up without mothers and fathers. Their grandmother is trying to raise them after the fact. The root of the problem is there, right? The norms, what the norms are of these communities that are providing many of these inmates.
You're incarcerated. At one point, you're now transferred. You're in lockup prison for how long?
I got transferred. So I had two cases, one in New York and one in New Jersey. They could have combined them, but they didn't. They wanted to be creeps about it. So I had to wait here, get sentenced, then go to Philly and get sentenced. I got to my first prison in like 2005, Butner, North Carolina, Butner Low, right? Butner Low was a low security institution with a fence around it, but you still had a lot of freedoms. There's a complex in Butner. There's 2 mediums, a hospital, a low, and a camp. I was at the low. The hospital is so overrun with inmates with medical issues. Remember, the Federal Bureau of Prisons was built for 100,000 inmates. At this point, there's 300, in the high 200s. So that means your number of inmates that are sick is also double, but you don't have the infrastructure for it. We literally had cancer patients in the low who would have to get up 5 o'clock in the morning, go to R&D, get stripped out, handcuffed, shackled, walk to the bus, driven to the medical center, have their chemotherapy treatment, and then go through that whole same process to come back. Now, that's not dehumanizing because the Bureau of Prisons can't handle it. I needed a hip replacement for 6 years. I got the approval 2 weeks before my clemency, and they said, you know what? We're not paying for it now. Get it when you get home.
Now you wind up in Birmingham.
Yep, I get transferred to Birmingham, which is a camp, no fence. You could walk away if you wanted. I got one of the best jobs on the compound. It was the landscape clerk and the warden's clerk. So I would cut the warden's grass, plant flowers in his yard. The whole time, it's the weirdest situation because I'm so mad at the system and I'm so mad at everybody that represents it. But I'm also smart enough to know that you can't fight them because you can't win.
You told me, and you write, that you had a blemish-free record the whole time you were incarcerated.
Yep, not a single write-up.
Which most people would be shocked at.
Yes, because you can get a write-up for anything. But
and there's opportunity for nonsense every day, every hour.
Before I went to prison, I didn't know about none of this, right? Just like the Easter flowers and just like the drugs I was selling, when I see a need and I can fill it, that's what I do. Same thing in a restaurant. If there's not enough event space for large parties or semi-privates, we make one, you create one. You have to respond to what the community wants. No different than your flower business. So in prison, you can only go to commissary once a week and you can only spend $175 a month if you have the money, which most of them do not. There's an internal, behind the fence kind of currency, mackerels or stamps. So if you work as a chef in the kitchen and you're an inmate and you want better food, you pay him in stamps or mackerels and he gives you better food.
Mackerels?
Right? So mackerels like a fish in a bag, like a tuna fish or a mackerel. I've never had it before. And I don't think I would ever eat it because it looks nasty, but that's probably why it was the currency. They were worth $1 and stamps were worth $3 for $1. I'm in prison and I opened a store. So a commissary store. So I would buy sodas, chips, Little Debbie's, whatever it is they had on commissary, and I would always have them. And if you spent your limit and you needed something, you would come to me and get it, and then you would give it back to me when you went to the store. Everybody on the yard was charging 2 for 1, but I did 3 for 2. So I just started, and this wasn't about the stamps or the money. It was about keeping me occupied. It was about keeping me from getting involved in all the other stuff.
Exactly. And you also are a consummate marketer. So new people arrive and they get
And-
off the bus and you're there to greet them.
Yes, because they can't go to the store, most of them, for a week. So I used to give them shower shoes, soap, shampoo, a little bit of food. I would give it to them because they're going to be here for 3 years, right? All the other store, man, they're staying in their cell. They're not introducing themselves. I paid off the R&D clerk to find out who was coming in, and I had their bags ready before they got here. And the commissary clerk, I knew when the little Debbies were coming, and I used to pay him off so that I would get all of them that I needed first, right? You have to corner the market. That's how it works. So this little
So
internal,
that's your side hustle, your side
Yeah.
gig. You're also taking care of the lawn. You have a golf cart at your disposal because you're moving stuff and you're going all in on it. You
Yeah.
want that lawn to be the best lawn.
yeah, exactly. Because then now you're viewed by the other corrections officers. That's the warden's clerk. We're not messing with him.
He
not-
makes the warden happy. We're not going to make
Yes.
him unhappy
Yes.
unnecessarily.
Exactly. If he goes too far over the line, fine. But if he's just skirting the line a little bit, we're not worried about it. I ran a sports book, right? I used to be the bookie. So inside prison, there's a division of the Bureau of Prisons called SIS, Special Investigation Services. And they were like the police there. They could arrest the warden if they wanted to. They only report to DC. So they called me in one day and they said, John, we know you're running a sports ticket. We don't care. You know why? I was like, why? He's like, because we've done our research, and when someone wins, you pay them. And if somebody doesn't pay you, you just let it go. If we lock you up and send you behind the fence somewhere, we might get somebody who's going to go stab that guy. And then we have bigger issues. So just keep doing what you're doing, be legit, and we're not going to bother you. Because we can't stop it. If we lock you up, someone else is going to do it. And I said, wow, that's like a different perspective than what I thought.
And this whole time, John, you also make yourself a student. You spend a lot of time in the library. You make yourself a student of the law. You feel like minimum sentencing has been your death sentence. All right. In other words,
Yeah,
it may have been your salvation, may have been, but you're saying, here I am, a young man in my 30s, and I'm looking at 20 years of this, and then another 10 of hard at home observation and reporting. So now you start learning how to write appeals.
I always felt from the time I got sentenced that the government incorrectly calculated my sentence. And I'm going to tell you why in a few short sentences that everyone can understand. 21 USC 841 says that if you have a felony drug conviction, after you've already had a felony drug conviction, your mandatory minimum doubles. So the key words in there are what's a felony drug conviction and what's after. Timeline. Felony drug conviction is any offense punishable by more than a year in prison. So I had a state case, which I mentioned, that I pled no contest to. It was downgraded to 1 year probation. In layman's terms, it's not more than a year in prison, so it doesn't count as a prior felony drug conviction. But the judge and the prosecutor argued that it's not what you were punished, it's what it was punishable by.
Mm-hmm.
And I always said that was vague, and that wasn't the intent of Congress when it was passed. And they viewed it that way, but it was shot down all the way to the Supreme Court.
But you're an angry guy, you're incarcerated, you feel like you've been wronged, you're searching for any way to save your life now. And you're writing these appeals, you're writing these requests for clemency, denied.
Yes.
And now what happens under the Obama administration?
So you watch George Bush get elected, and you can't wait for the next election. And then you see him steal the second election. Now you're really discouraged. And then Obama gets elected. I remember the night Obama got elected, when he walked out on stage in that park in Chicago. It was late at night, but every person in that prison was up and watching that TV. There were no dominoes being slammed down, nobody yelling, nobody screaming, because he represented hope, right? He represented somebody who was from these communities that are putting all these young men and women in prison who might just understand.
And so Obama puts in a new piece of a new regulation.
Well, this is the second term now. First term goes, everyone's mad at this point. He gets reelected, and then things start to happen. The clemency initiative. Eric Holder and him announced the clemency initiative that said, if you have served more than 50% of your sentence, you have no violence in your history, you have a clean prison record, and you would have received less time being sentenced in 2015 than when you were sentenced, tell us why you should go home. Do a petition.
And you're reading this and say, check.
Check, check,
Check.
check, check, check.
There's no day like a birthday. It's a time to celebrate. Every year, every wish that brought you to this point. Wrapped in birthday love, toasting a future as bright as the moment before you. The best gift is each
Listen,
other.
you don't have to do your petition. We have 1,500 lawyers from the Clemency Project that's going to do your petition for you. Not me. I'm not waiting for no lawyer no more. The first one got me 30 years and charged me 60 grand. I'm doing this myself. Got up every day, went to the law library. Now, granted, I've been preparing for this for 13 years. I had 85 certificates from in-prison programming. I had college classes from Ohio University, college program for the incarcerated that I was taking, and I was ready. I just put it all together, did one little summary personal statement directly to Obama about everything that we just talked about. And I just asked for his humble consideration. A year goes by. Every 3 months, he's letting out 50, 80, 100. It's getting towards the end of his term, only
Now,
a year left.
What's the tone and tenor like inside now with this clemency project? Everyone's trying for it, whether they qualify or not. You think you qualify. What does that do to the morale of
Hope.
you and your
Hope.
fellow inmates? Yeah.
Hope.
Before that, you had no
hope. No hope at all. And that's really how they felt. In justice system, there are people right now in prison, life sentences for marijuana, and you can buy it on the streets in New York City.
John, when there is hope, was there a noticeable, palpable change in attitude and behavior?
100%. 100. When you treat a class of people like they can never attain something, what benefit is there or motivation is there for them to do better or be good or treat each other with respect? Basically society's telling them your life is not worth anything. I'm not saying that's correct, but that's really how it feels to them. I remember walking out the door when I left and I looked over my shoulder and there's still 4 or 5 faces that I'll remember for the rest of my life. And it's a burden I've carried on my shoulders since the day I came home, was that I needed to be successful so they got a chance one day. Coop from Atlanta had 40 years, 2 kids for a very little amount of drugs. Keith from Florida had a life sentence for marijuana. It was just like heartbreaking. And I'm walking out the door saying, these guys are so much more deserving of this than me, but they didn't know how to write a petition.
You went a year with your clemency appeal in the process.
Yep.
And there's a lady lawyer you interacted with at the Clemency Project.
She called me one time. She wasn't moving fast enough. I sent it in without her. A year later, my case manager called me, said, hey, Obama's administration wants your prison records. Can I give them to him? I'm like, well, you tell me. What do you think? If I say, oh, you're going to give them to him anyway. You know what I'm saying? So listen, it's great that you told me. You need stamps to mail them out here. That was that. So now I start to get a little bit excited, because before that, most of the recipients had been crack cocaine offenders who received 100-to-1 ratio, because crack and cocaine is the same thing, but the way the sentencing sentenced them, one got far worse sentence than the other. Several points I'm saying, well, you know what? This is just for them. It's not going to apply to me.
You're in how many years at this point?
I'm in 11 and a half at this point.
Are you sober that whole time?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So now you get a call.
I'm working. I hear my name over the loudspeaker. This jive turkey counselor I had, who's horrible, called me to the office. I walk in. I'm like, what's up, Brown? He's like, SIS wants to see you at 1 o'clock. I don't care. SIS, I don't care about SIS. He says, just be there. I said, I'm not waiting till 1 o'clock. I'm going right now. They want to see me? I'm going right now. So I go over to the warden's office. I said, hey, warden, SIS wants to see me. Can you call them? I want to see him now. I don't want to wait till 1 o'clock. He said, John, just come back at 1 o'clock. Right? So I leave. I go back at 1 o'clock. I'm sitting on the bench. There's 6 other guys there. I'm trying to figure out what's going on because administration's great in there to try to get a bunch of people together, try to question them, threaten to lock them up to get the information they want. So I'm wondering, what could this be about? Everybody on the bench is like from a different demographic, from a different part of the country. Nobody hangs out together. It was just
No conversation.
no correlation. So I said to them, I said, did everybody here apply for clemency? Not that narrowed it down because almost everybody did anyway, even if they weren't sentenced. They said, yeah. I said, well, this is it. I said, there's no other correlation between any of us. I'm like, we all know each other, but we don't eat together. We don't go to the yard together. We don't work together. It can't be nothing but that. So one by one, they called everybody in. I was last. But every time somebody came out, they're slamming the door, they're cursing, they're saying, FSIS, this place sucks. I can't wait to get out of here. So I'm like, all right, what is this now? So I walk in, the warden says, the phone rings just as I walk in. The warden says, answer that. I'm like, come on. You don't answer the phone in prison. You touch the phone in prison, you'll never see the sunlight for a year. He said, John, answer the phone. Answered the phone, and it was Temi Topi Youssef. And I'll remember these words for the rest of my life. She said, Mr. Gargano, she said, this is Temi Topi Youssef. I'm the lawyer who was assigned to you from the Clemency Project. And I fought the urge to say, oh, yeah, thanks for doing my petition, but I didn't. And she says, just want to let you know, Obama signed your petition this morning. You're going home in 4 days. Just like, wow. I got out, I went outside, I got in the golf car. And just like I would do often is I would just drive around the Air Force Base. And I pulled up to this little area that I was responsible for, all these trees and flowers. And I just sat there. You know, and I just thought about that journey and what the next journey was going to be, right? You're not planning to go home 10 years before you're supposed to get out. I thought about my dad. He had died a couple years before that. It was almost count time, so I had to go back to the unit anyway. So I stopped where the phones are. I called my mom. I said, Mom, are you sitting down? She said, Jesus Christ, you always call here with this bullshit. I said, Mom, just sit down. I said, Obama signed my petition this morning, Mom. I said, coming home in 4 days. She said, Johnny, she said, since the day your father died, I prayed for one thing. She said, all I wanted to do to make my life complete was to see you come home. She said, and I knew you wouldn't let me down. Some powerful words. And then it was, you know, it was just a million questions from there. Where am I going to live? You know, the government makes you go back to the jurisdiction where you were sentenced. So I had to come back to New York. I didn't have no family here. I didn't know nobody here. You know, my whole family lived in New Jersey. Obama's foundation sent a person to meet me at the prison. They took me to the airport, brought me to New York, had me stop at Walmart, bought me everything I needed, underwear, socks, all that stuff, dropped me off at the halfway house. And now I'm at the halfway house in New York, which really is just as bad as the prison system because the staff there care less. The system in the halfway houses are designed for people to fail. Most inmates don't even make it out of the halfway house. They get sent back beforehand, but not me. When I was leaving R&D, the prison guard said, we'll see you when you get back. I said, not me.
That was as a dig?
Yeah, like, we'll see you when you get back. Like, basically saying, all of you come back. I said, not me. I said, I'm going to work my ass off the rest of my life, make sure every last one of you worthless prison guards are unemployed.
But statistically, that's true.
It's true because we don't address it.
Is it, did you say 80% are reincarcerated?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
In
Within 3 years. If you go out 6 years, it's like 91.
If you weren't part of the Obama Clemency Project, they drop you off at a bus stop.
That's it. Yep.
And what did they give you then? What goodie bag did they give you?
Nothing.
Literally nothing. You don't have a dime?
I had $10,000 or $20,000 worth of commissary in everybody's lockers all through the prison from my store. And there was a couple of young Mexican kids from Florida who I became close with. We used to cook together every day. I gave it all to him. He had like 10 years left. I said, here is, that's for you. You know, I'm not taking it with me. Here, run the store. That was a pastime for me. That was a therapy. That was a don't get in trouble. I came to the halfway house.
Which is in the Bronx?
In the Bronx. Geo halfway house in the Bronx, thinking that when I'm get there, there's going to be, wraparound services. There's going to be all these things, but they're not. You're lucky if they feed you. That's how bad it is. In order to get a job, you have to go through this whole process. Then you have to give them a pass to get out of the halfway house 2 weeks in advance. Most people don't have their schedules 2 weeks in advance. So the system is just designed to frustrate.
But you have no cash. What about a driver's license?
I had nothing, no identification, nothing.
You have no ID.
Nothing. You would think in 13 years, the Federal Bureau of Prisons could have figured out a program to make sure that the inmates left with identification. The simplest of necessities when they leave. How strong are the reentry services? They're horrible. They're non-existent.
Reading your post last night, John, about that you did in Humans of New York, that you paint such a graphic picture of how the system is designed to be an impediment to your success, not an assist, an impediment. You have no money, you're left on a bus stop, you have no contacts, you have no identification, you are just there almost naked.
Yep.
Saying, okay, go succeed, pal.
Needing 2 hip replacements with a chronic illness. Didn't even give me medicine for 3 weeks. I got to the halfway house, I met a fellow inmate who said, listen, go to this clinic. Where I came from, where I grew up, clinics to me has a very negative connotation to it. You think about waiting 5 hours to be seen. I'm like, oh, no clinic. He said, go there. Go see Iris. Right? And everything I kept hearing was Iris, 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 almost like talking about Oprah or God. Iris is a licensed therapist for the Coming Home Project at Mount Sinai St. Luke's Hospital. Iris herself did 13 years in state prison when her apartment got raided by state DEA agents. It was her boyfriend's drugs. He cooperated, got 2 years. She got 13. She had 6 children. Her youngest daughter had a son who had a child and another daughter, died of cancer like just when I met her. So she's now raising the grandson and the great-grandson and the granddaughter, working 80 hours a week, trying to help people like me coming home. And every year in January, she has to sweat for 45 days just to find out that the funding came through and they can make it another year.
How do you climb this mountain? You have no money, you have no ID, you have no medical coverage, you don't even necessarily have access to food. And now you're expected to get a job, get an apartment, be self-sufficient, find your own way to healthcare, but you did.
You have to prioritize, right? What's first? Medical's first. So I said, Iris, let's get, she brought me over to the physician assistant the first day. I told Dr. Zudi, I told her about my hips. She said, the reason you have hip problems is because you're on this medication that is now known to cause this. And we've known for 6 years that you should have gotten changed off of this 6 years ago, but the Bureau of Prisons kept giving it to you. That's why you need 2 hip replacements. My case is a bellwether case against Gilead because they knew that it caused that and they didn't tell nobody until 10 years later. That's about to go to trial. But she got me off of that the same day. However I contracted HIV, they felt as though I contracted Hep C at the same time. So they got me Hep C treatment. 10 weeks later, cured, never to come back again 6 years later. Free. The state of New York offers it free, yet the federal government couldn't offer it free in prison. There's just, priorities are not there. She got me my hip replacements. I did the first one, and then I said, I'm going to go to work. At some point, I need to start bringing in money. I reached out to George Perrier from Philly. I got a handwritten letter of recommendation from him, and I started applying. Nobody called me. Nobody would call me for an interview. So I figured it out. It was probably because my resume had a 15-year gap on it or 13-year gap on it. And there was an ad for event captain at River Park or event support at River Park.
River Park, a restaurant at the time on the east side of New York,
yep.
overlooking the East River, beautiful spot in a brand new building run by craft hospitality, the famous chef, Tom Colicchio.
I was ready for it. So I had my resume. I knew what I was going to say. I walked in. I asked for Raven. They said, have a seat. So now I'm waiting for Raven to come. I'm on him. I've been practicing this on the train all the way here. Raven walks up to me. Before he even got to me, I met him like 6 feet tall. I said, here's my resume. Before you ask, there's a 15-year gap. This is why. It's not who I am, but it's part of me. I think you should know. He said, let's have a seat for a minute, right? So we sit down. We talk. He said, I don't care about none of that. If Obama lets you out of prison, that's good enough for us. Let's go. We're going to give you a $10 an hour beer garden cashier job, opening beer cans in the beer garden. I said, great, I'll take it. Later on, I found out, he said, the only reason I hired you is I graduated from Ohio University. He's like, and how could I tell somebody from my alma mater no? I said, hey, whatever worked. It got me in the door. But the reality there is that, hiring professionals in this city, in this industry, and probably most, they have a negative view of somebody coming home from prison. It isn't all of them. There are some good in there. For us just to exclude all of them, we're selling ourselves short, society short, and that person short. I still talk to Iris every week. Still talk to her every week. So she gets me in College Initiative, a program for prison to college pipeline. If you're justice impacted at all, you can go there. They pay for all your application fees. They give you stipends for transportation. They do everything to try to promote getting kids from disadvantaged communities that have been impacted by the criminal justice system into CUNY schools. Without them, I would be 78.1%.
So they get you into a community college, also in the Bronx.
Yep, Hostos Community College. I said, I don't need to go to college. I'm smarter than all these people. But then I thought about it. I said, you know what? My mother, my whole life, urged me to go to college. I said, let me do this for her. Let her have peace of mind at her age. Her son's a different person. Let it validate my re-entry into the workforce. Let me do it. I worked full-time and went to school full-time. Full-time plus. Most kids took 4 classes. I took 6. Graduated from Hostos with a 4.0 in business administration. It was about a month before graduation, and a kid in my class said, hey, I just got a scholarship to go to NYU. I said, what? I said, how'd you get a scholarship to go to NYU? He said, yeah, here, you fit the demographic, what they're asking for, the qualifications, apply. He's like, you need a professor to recommend you, nominate you. So I said, I already know who I'm going to ask. Professor Sandy Figueroa. She's 77 years old. She's been in public education for 65 years. She teaches a business communications class. My first day in there, she asked me why I took this class. And my answers were like, I think this, or I hope that. She said, think and hope. She's like, we don't use them words in business. She's like, definitive. She chewed me up and spit me out the first day. And I said, this one here, she's going to teach me something. So she nominated me. Long story short, I got a scholarship to go to NYU, all from the College Initiative and Iris, which got me on the track. 3 months after the beer garden, I became a captain. 3 months after that, I became a manager. 3 months after that, I became a director of hospitality. Right before the pandemic hit, I got the scholarship to go to NYU. So most of the pandemic, I stayed home taking classes from NYU. But while I was working at River Park, it was hold yourself to a higher level of accountability than anybody else does. And you'll always be in the 99th percentile against your peers. I was the first one to work, the last one to leave. I made sure I knew you needed a drink before you knew you needed a drink. I knew you by name when you came in. I knew what you liked to eat and drink. And I just made it personal. When you make things personal, you create long-lasting relationships that guests want to come see you. The dining community in New York, in the restaurant side of it, for years has gotten less and less personal. And I'm against that. I think the more personal you make it, the more strength your followers have, and so will your financial statements. And that's just how I operated as a manager. And we just kept growing.
I remember you had a week off one time.
Actually, I went home for a month. I said, Mom, I've been going for 20 years. I ran away for 5. I went to prison for 13. Now I worked for 3. I'm all yours for the summer. What do you want to do? She said, I want to go to the peach orchard, pick peaches, and I want to make jam. We get to the peach orchard. I'm fighting her. I want to get on the ladder. No, I could pick peaches. What do you think I did for the last 20 years? You weren't here. Held the ladder, she picked the peaches. We went home and we started making jams. So it was peaches, then it was blueberries, then it was strawberries, then it was apple. It was all summer long. That's all we did.
What was that time with your mom like?
Priceless. Priceless. Without a pandemic, it probably would have never happened, right? But it was good. It was good. She got to tell me a lot of the things that she probably wanted to tell me for years and didn't, and I got to tell her a lot of things. It was a special time.
So now you're putting bricks on the wall of pleasing mom, and the next one is you graduate from NYU.
So I get a phone call one day. It's the warden or the dean. Warden. I can't believe I said warden. It's the dean. She said, John, it's the dean's office. Your classmates selected you to be commencement speaker, and we want to know if you're interested in interviewing for that role. I love to talk, so of course, there's an interview. Everybody has 10 minutes one day. They send out this sample speech, right? And they said, we want you to read this during the interview. We want to see how you articulate. But it was like so standard, and it didn't apply to me, so I couldn't. If you're giving a speech, you're feeling the words, right? You wrote them, how you deliver it, where you enunciate. So I rewrote the whole thing. So I get to the interview, and before I said the speech, I said, listen, I'm sorry, but I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and I can't speak well if I don't feel what I'm speaking. So I rewrote this. And when I was done, it's like, okay, thank you. I was like, I hope rewriting the speech didn't hurt me. They said, trust me. She's like, it did not hurt you. They were supposed to let us know in 2 days. They didn't let us know. Took 2 weeks. So about 2 weeks, 10 days in, I said to my friend Jessica that they're picking me. And she said, why? I said, think about it. They're marching this kid out there on stage that sold every drug known to mankind to be commencement speaker. Some people need to sign off on this. The dean's secretary is not doing this. And she said, you know what? You're right. And 2 days later, they called me and they told me I'm a pretty tough guy. There's not too many things that make me cry. When Obama signed my petition and when NYU did that, I was very emotional.
And one of your prized possessions now is a note you got from President Obama.
The day I gave my commencement speech, the doorbell rang. It was FedEx. Quite different than the FedEx from my mom's house delivering my diagnosis. But, I looked at it and it said Barack Obama on the package. I was like, and I open it, you think it's going to be a letter signed by this foundation, who knows? It's a handwritten note, little postcard that says, John, congratulations on your graduation from NYU. Michelle and I have been watching you, and you make us so proud. I hear you're going to work at Kraft. Do your thing and watch those front doors, because I'll be coming to see you. He hasn't made it yet, but he will. The letter that granted me my clemency, there's a paragraph that says, as you depart, there will be times when society doubts that you have the ability to change. You might even doubt that yourself. But just remember that your success will dictate the trajectory of the brothers and sisters you left behind. Please consider them as you make your choices. For as subtle as it sounds, every time I came to those crossroads and they happen. When you come out of prison, all your old friends want to call you up. They want to give you illegal things. They want to help you. They want to get you right back in the game. Not me. I had no social media. I refused to get it. Nobody had my phone number. I didn't want to see nobody that I knew before prison, and I still don't.
Some of my best friends and people I most admire are people in recovery. I would say almost all of them are people who still work the program. What are you doing in that regard?
And my therapy really is watching people grow. When I take a kid that doesn't speak any English and I get him in ESL classes and he goes from making $40,000 to being a captain and making 100, it just feeds my energy. When I take a kid who 17 different foster homes, fought for everything that he ever had in his life, sexually abused as a child, angry, and now he's getting married and moving into a home with his new baby, like, that's contagious. It's like the partnership we had with Smile Farms. when you see Manny and Tyrell and Kimberly and them come here and the first one here, and they're so diligent to make sure they're doing a good job, and they feel part of this team. They're in the front of the room every day for the meeting. If you can't look at that and say everybody should have that opportunity, then you're just not human.
Let's shine a little light on that. So Smile Farms is a program. It's been around now for about 7 years. What we do at Smile Farms is try and create work, career, and job training opportunities for people with disabilities, particularly developmental disabilities, and their adults. We did our fundraising gala at that River Park restaurant you referenced earlier, where you ran the show, and we got to know you then. And when you and Tom realized what we were trying to do, you stepped up and said, "Hey, we have some work opportunities." We had a couple of people working in the garden that you created over at River Park. And then when that went away, because they were going to construct a new building on that property where we had set up our container farm, you decided to bring a couple of people in house and give a little color now to the couple of folks who work at Craft and what they do.
Right, River Park Farm. Jonathan Sumner, who now works closely with Smile Farms in Brooklyn Grange, he was the farmer there, and we started there employing workers from Smile Farms. And when I saw the change in Kevin, he was so thrilled to come to work and so respectful and just so happy to be part of a team. When I got here to Craft, I said, I'm going to figure out where to put a farm on 19th Street. I mean, there's nowhere to put a farm on 19th Street. We have a roof. The landlord said we could put it on the roof, but you have to walk up 10 flights of stairs to get to it. So whoever we hired would quit today. And then finally I said, why does it have to be a farm? And that's what I went to you. I said, Jim, why does it have to be a farm? Why can't these workers work in restaurants?
You can tell us about the day not too long ago that the world-class glass polisher decided to speak up.
So we asked for shout outs, right? So yay, we shouting out Santiago. He did this, he did that. So out of the blue, Manny, when I called for a shout out, he's like, I have a shout out. So he walked behind the bar where all the managers were, and he went on this like minute-long shout out, shouting me out for giving him an opportunity when nobody else would, right? And you hear them words, same words I said about Crafted at River Park, right? The same words that those inmates from those disadvantaged communities think will never happen. It was touching, right? He's shouting me out. He wants to shout me out for giving him an opportunity that nobody else ever would. I mean, that's special.
John, thanks for sharing your story with us. It's remarkable. I can't wait to come see you again at Craft sometime soon, or one of your other restaurants, or half a dozen restaurants Craft Hospitality Group operates in and around New York. They're all terrific. And more than that, they're special because of the people who make up Craft Hospitality. And you're the poster child.
People over profits. People over profits. That's our logo.
Thanks, John.
We put our heart into everything we do. We are farmers, bakers, florists, and makers who grow and create with a passion. 1-800-Flowers. Share with love.
Well, I hope you enjoyed what you heard, and I know I'll be sharing it forward. I hope you get to as well. Let's keep the conversation going. Follow me along on Twitter at Jim1800Flowers and on LinkedIn at Jim McCann. Hope to talk to you soon.